Brother died, I was watering the tomato plants on my back porch. I remember that, not the phone call, not the lawyer's voice, just the water, the soft sound of it hitting the dry soil, the smell of basil in the afternoon sun. 58 years old, a widow for two, and I thought for a long, still moment before I picked up that phone that nothing would ever surprise me again. I was wrong. My name is Eleanor Ashford, and 40 years ago, my only brother walked out of our house in the middle of a winter night and never came back. No letter, no phone call, no goodbye. I spent 4 decades believing he had chosen to forget me. I was wrong about that too. What I found inside a locked barn on 2 acres of Oregon forest, the key, he left me, the letters, he never sent the son. I didn't know he had it rewrote every story I had ever told myself about my family, about love, about the years I thought were already over. If you have ever sat alone in a house too big for one person believing the best chapters of your life were already behind you, please stay with me for this one, because sometimes the door we thought was closed for good was only ever waiting for the right key, and the key was in our hand all along. The kitchen phone was ringing when I came in from the porch. Not my cell, the old landline. The one Robert had insisted on keeping. For emergencies, he used to say. He had been dead for 2 years, and I still hadn't canceled the service. Some things you keep, not because you use them, because taking them away feels like losing him a second time. I set the watering can on the counter, wiped my hands on my jeans, picked up the receiver. Hello, is this Eleanor Ashford? A man's voice, careful, practiced, the kind of voice that only calls with news you don't want. This is she. Mrs. Ashford, my name is Harold Deming. I'm an attorney calling from Blackwood Ridge, Oregon. I'm sorry to reach you this way. I'm calling regarding your brother. I didn't sit down. I don't remember why. Maybe because sitting down would have made it real. My brother. Bennett Ashford. I'm afraid he passed away 2 months ago. I've been trying to locate you. His paperwork was incomplete. The word brother did something to my chest. It cracked open a door I had nailed shut when I was 18 years old. 2 months ago, I said. Yes, ma'am. And you're just calling me now. He had you listed only as Sister Eleanor, last known address, California. No phone number, no middle initial. It took time. I looked at the tomato plants through the kitchen window. The water was pooling around the base of the closest one. I had overwatered it. Robert used to say I always overwatered the tomatoes. Mr. Deming, I said, my brother left our family a long time ago. I did not know if he was alive or dead until this moment. Forgive me, I don't know what you want from me. There was a pause, a long one. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Mrs. Ashford, he left you something. Corinne called me 20 minutes after I hung up. I don't know how she knew. Maybe the attorney called her too. Maybe daughters sometimes feel it in the air. She was in Denver. She had 2 children and a husband and a job that made her tired in a way I recognized. Mom, what's going on? Not a question, a demand. Your uncle died. My what? Bennett, my brother. The silence on the other end was long enough that I thought she might have hung up. Mom, I didn't know you had a brother. There it was, a whole adult life of not talking about him. A whole adult life of pretending I was an only child. A whole adult life of letting my own daughter grow up believing our family started with just me. I closed my eyes. I know, sweetheart. I know. When did Mom, why didn't you ever say? Because I didn't know if he was alive. Because talking about him felt like lying either way. Because your grandfather forbade his name in the house. Because I was 18 and I never learned how. Mom, I'm sorry, Corinne. She let out a breath, the kind of breath you let out when you don't have the energy to be angry anymore. Okay, she said. Okay, so what happens now? He left me something. Property, a barn, a little land up in Oregon. How much? 2 acres. A developer offered enough to cover the back taxes, maybe a little over. So sell it. I opened my eyes. The kitchen was very quiet. Corinne, Mom, sell it. You don't need a barn in Oregon. You need to stay in Sacramento where I can get to you, where I can get to you. I wanted to ask when she had decided that my life was a thing to be managed. I wanted to ask if she remembered that I had taught her to swim and to read and to change a tire. And now she spoke to me like I was the tire. I said none of that. I'm going to drive up there, I said. I want to see it before I decide. Mom, no, fly. Don't drive by yourself. It's like 12 hours. Corinne, I'm going. She was quiet, then very carefully, Mom, are you okay? And I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, a surprise one. Because for the first time in 2 years, for the first time since I had held Robert's hand in that hospital bed and watched the monitor go flat, someone had asked me that question and I did not know the answer. I'll call you when I get there, I said, and I hung up. I packed that night a small suitcase, 2 sweaters, a pair of walking shoes. The photograph of my mother I kept in my nightstand, and because I couldn't leave it behind, Robert's flannel shirt, the gray and blue one, the one that still smelled like him if I pressed my face into the collar and lied to myself. I sat on the edge of the bed with the shirt in my lap, and I let myself think about Bennett. Even the name felt strange in my mouth. I hadn't said it out loud in decades. Bennett at 12, teaching me to skip stones at the reservoir. He was 3 years older than me, 3 years and 11 days. Bennett at 15, letting me sit on his shoulders at the state fair. Bennett at 21, on the last night I ever saw him, standing in the doorway of my bedroom with a duffel bag in one hand and a look on his face I had never understood. I'm sorry, Ellie girl. I had been half asleep. I had barely heard him. In the morning, he was gone. My father had thrown his clothes into the yard and burned them in the incinerator behind the shed. My mother had gone silent for a week, and no one, not one person, had ever explained to me why. I had assumed he was angry enough to leave and never look back. I had assumed he had not thought about me at all. Almost 40 years. I lay down with Robert's shirt still in my hand, and for the first time in a very long time, I did not fall asleep alone with grief. I fell asleep with a question. I left before dawn. The freeway out of Sacramento was almost empty. Just me and the trucks. North on I-5, past Redding, past the last of the golden California hills, into the mountains. The radio didn't work. The antenna had broken years ago, and Robert had always meant to fix it, so I drove in silence for the first 2 hours. Just the hum of the tires. I hadn't been alone in a car this long since our honeymoon. Robert and I had driven up the coast for our honeymoon, all the way to Cannon Beach. He had wanted to see the sea stacks at sunset. He had held my hand across the console the whole way, and every time we stopped for gas, he had kissed me on the top of the head, like I was something he was afraid to lose. I was 26 when we got married. I was 56 when he died. 30 years is a long time to be kissed on the top of the head. Somewhere north of the Oregon border, I started to cry. Not for Robert, not exactly, and not for Bennett either. It was for the woman who had married that man, for the girl who had lost a brother, for the child who had grown up in a house where the truth was never said out loud. I pulled off at a rest stop near Grants Pass. I wiped my face with a napkin from the glove compartment, bought a cup of bad coffee from a machine, sat on a picnic bench in the cold Oregon air, and watched a family of crows argue over a piece of bread. And then I got back in the car and I kept driving. Blackwood Ridge was not a town. Not really. It was a gas station, a diner, a hardware store, a post office the size of a shed, a church with a white steeple that had faded to gray, a single blinking yellow light at the intersection. I pulled into the gas station just before dusk. I had been on the road for 11 hours. The man behind the counter was in his 60s, gray beard, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked up from a crossword puzzle. And then he did something strange. He looked at me, really looked. His eyes went from my face to my hair to my face again. And he set his pencil down very slowly. Ma'am, he said, forgive me, but are you Bennett's sister? I stared at him. I'm sorry, Bennett Ashford. You look just like him, around the eyes. I felt my hand go to the counter to steady myself. Yes, I said, I'm his sister, Eleanor. The man came out from behind the counter. He didn't shake my hand. He just stood there looking at me with something in his face I could not read at first. And then I understood what it was. It was grief, quiet grief. The kind you carry for a long time before you get to share it with anyone. I'm Marlon, he said. I ran his tab here for near 30 years. He was a good man, ma'am, a quiet man. He didn't talk about family, but when he did, it was you, only ever you. I could not speak. He nodded as if he understood. The barn's 4 miles up the ridge road. You take the second left after the mailbox with the horseshoe on it. There's a sign, old wooden one, says Ashford. Silas Ward lives next door, older fella. He's been keeping an eye on the place. I found my voice. Thank you, Marlon. He nodded again. And then, as I was turning to leave, he said something that stopped me at the door. Ma'am, he talked about you like you were still 16. I looked back. He said you had a laugh that could make a room forget its troubles. He said he hoped you still did. I got in the car. I sat behind the wheel for a long time before I started the engine, because someone else had said my brother's name out loud, and it sounded like love. The ridge road climbed, pine trees pressed in on both sides. The sky through the canopy was turning bruised purple. I passed the mailbox with the horseshoe. I took the second left. My headlights caught the sign a moment later, a plank of dark cedar, hand-carved, nailed to a fence post. Ashford. The letters were deep, careful, made by someone who had taken his time. I turned onto the gravel drive. The barn came out of the trees like something in a dream. It was not what I had expected, not the ruin the lawyer's report had described. Yes, the paint was faded. Yes, one of the windows was cracked. Yes, moss climbed the north side of the roof. But the structure itself, I could see it even in the dying light, was sound. Beams straight, foundation solid, a wide sliding door on the front, a stone chimney rising from the back like a spine. Someone had built this, not thrown it up, built it, board by board. I killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was enormous. 2 acres of forest, my name on the deed, my brother's ghost somewhere in the trees. I got out of the car. The air was cold. It smelled like pine sap and wet earth. I walked toward the barn slowly, gravel under my boots, my breath visible. I stopped at the door. The padlock was ancient, iron, rust in the grooves. The key was in my coat pocket wrapped in tissue paper, the way you wrap something you are afraid to break. I took it out. It was heavier than it should have been. A key, like a promise. I slid it into the lock. It fought me for a moment. Grit, age, weather. I jiggled it, twisted, pushed, click. The shackle sprang open. I did not push the door yet. I stood there in the twilight with my hand on the wood, because I was afraid, not of what was inside. I was afraid of what it would mean if what was inside changed my mind about my brother. I was afraid of hope, but I pushed the door anyway. It slid on its rails with a low, smooth rumble. Well-oiled, cared for. The dark inside had a weight, a shape. I fumbled for the flashlight I had brought from the glove compartment, clicked it on. The beam caught the edge of a workbench. Then a wall of tools hanging on pegboard, each in its own outlined place. Chisels, planes, hand saws polished to a soft sheen. A set of calipers arranged largest to smallest. Stacks of lumber against the far wall. Oak, walnut, cherry. A table saw, a lathe, a drill press. And in the center of it all, under a canvas drop cloth, pulled halfway back a rocking chair. Half finished, curved runners, a carved back. The wood so smooth it looked like water. I stepped inside. My flashlight found more. A wall calendar from 2 years ago still hanging where he had left it. A coffee mug on the workbench, dust settled at the bottom. A pair of reading glasses folded neatly beside a pencil. It was not a ruin. It was a life. Interrupted. I lowered the flashlight. My hand was shaking. "Oh, Bennett," I said. The barn absorbed my voice, took it into its rafters. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the last of the daylight to bleed out of the sky. Long enough for something inside me, some tight little knot I had carried since I was 18 years old, to loosen a single thread. He had built this for a very long time, and I had never known. "Ma'am," I spun. A figure stood in the doorway, tall, stooped a little, a lantern in one hand. My heart hammered against my ribs. "I'm sorry," the voice said. Slow, gentle, old. "I saw the car. Didn't mean to scare you." He raised the lantern so I could see him. An old man, 70 maybe, white beard trimmed short, pale blue eyes under heavy brows, a wool coat buttoned to the throat, work boots that had been resoled more than once. "You must be Eleanor," he said. "Yes. I'm Silas, Silas Ward. Your brother and I were neighbors for a long time." I could not answer. My mouth was too dry. He stepped inside, slowly. He set the lantern down on the workbench where it threw a warm circle of light across the wood. "I've been keeping the place up," he said. "Best I could, mowed in the summer, swept in the fall. He asked me to, before he went." Before he went. He looked at me for a long moment. "Ma'am, when did you last speak to your brother?" I opened my mouth, closed it. "When I was 18, I said finally. He was 21. It was a Tuesday in February. Silas nodded slowly, like he had suspected as much. He said as much, never told me why, just that there was a sister, a little sister, and that she didn't know. Didn't know what, I whispered. He did not answer right away. He walked instead to the far wall past the workbench. In the corner where the shadows lay thickest, there was a small cabinet I had not seen. Simple, handmade, cherry wood. He opened it. Inside was a wooden box. He lifted it out with both hands the way you lift something precious. He carried it back to the workbench and set it down in the lantern light. It was maybe the size of a family Bible. The lid was carved. I could see the letters even from where I stood. For Ellie when she comes, I made a sound, something from below language. He carved this 15 years ago, Silas said quietly. He believed you'd come one day. He said, Silas, when she does, you give her the box. But I'm not giving you the key. She's got the key. She's always had it. I looked down at my hand. The iron key was still in my palm, the same key that had opened the padlock outside. I stepped forward. The lantern's light warmed my face. Silas stepped back to give me room. I tried the key in the box. It slid in like it had been waiting. Click. I lifted the lid. Inside were letters, stacked, bundled with twine. Each bundle labeled in careful pencil with a year. The one on top was loose, not bundled, placed there deliberately. It was addressed in a strong, sure hand. Ellie, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you found the barn. Read this one first, please. My knees went. I caught myself on the edge of the workbench. Silas put a hand on my elbow. Steady, kind, nothing more. Sit down, ma'am, he said softly. He guided me to a stool by the bench. I'll be right outside. You take your time. He left the lantern. The door slid shut behind him, and I was alone in my brother's barn with a letter on top that began with the words I had been waiting my whole life to read. I unfolded the paper. His handwriting swam in the lantern light. I wiped my eyes with the back of my wrist. Ellie, oh, I'm sorry. That's the first thing. I've been sorry a long time, and I never figured out how to say it in a way that would reach you without breaking you. So I stopped trying, and I started writing instead. There are letters in this box for every year I was gone. You can read them or you can burn them. Either way, I need you to know I never stopped thinking about you. I know what our father told you. I know what our mother let you believe. But it wasn't true, Ellie. None of it was true. I didn't leave because I was angry. I left because I was afraid of what he would do to you if I stayed. The letter fell from my fingers. It drifted down onto the workbench next to the coffee mug he had left 2 years ago, next to the pencil, next to the reading glasses he had folded when he was still alive and expecting to come back. I put my hands over my face. And in the quiet of that barn with the lantern burning steady and the pines whispering outside, I wept. Wept, not the way I had wept for Robert, not the way I had wept for my mother. I wept the way a child weeps when she finally understands that she was loved, that she had always been loved, and that the person who loved her most had spent his life carrying that love in silence, waiting for a door to open. Outside, Silas stood on the porch of the barn with his lantern, and he did not come in. He just waited, the way he had waited a long time, for me. I do not know how long I sat there. Long enough for the lantern to burn low. Long enough for my knees to stop shaking. Long enough for the letter in my lap to stop being an object and start being a voice. I left because I was afraid of what he would do to you if I stayed. I read the sentence again and again, because a lifetime of story does not come apart in one reading. It comes apart the way frozen ground comes apart in spring. Slowly, then all at once. Our father, Walter Ashford, a man who wore a tie to church and kept a ledger of every dollar he spent and shook the pastor's hand with a firm, dry grip. A man the neighbors called steady. A man who at home was something else. I closed my eyes, and I remembered. The winter I was 17. The stitches under my hairline, 12 of them. The doctor asking me, careful, sweetheart, how did this happen? And my mother answering before I could open my mouth. She slipped on the stairs. Poor thing. Ice on the landing. I remembered nodding, because that was what I had been told to say, because I had been so dazed I could not remember what had happened, because the truth had been rewritten before I woke up. I remembered Bennett coming home that night, standing over my bed, his hands and fists at his sides, not looking at me, looking at the door. I remembered a shouting match through the wall. Bennett and my father. Something breaking. And then I remembered this was the part that had lived buried in me for a lifetime, and I had never let myself dig it up until now. I remembered my father's voice. You stay in this house, boy, and I promise you, she won't just fall downstairs next time. I opened my eyes. The lantern hissed. A moth was circling the glass. He threatened me. My father threatened me. To my brother's face. To make my brother leave. And Bennett left. To save me. I put both hands flat on the workbench. Because if I did not put my hands on something solid, I was going to slide off the stool and onto the barn floor, and I was not sure I would be able to get back up. The door slid open behind me. Ma'am, Silas, careful, not intruding. I'm okay, I said, and then I laughed. A small, cracked laugh. I'm not, but I will be. He stepped inside. Slow, he carried two enamel mugs, steam rising off both. Ruth sent coffee, he said. She figured you might need it. Ruth, my wife. Your wife knows I'm here. Ma'am, the whole ridge knows you're here. He said it kindly, not as a joke, as a fact. And there was something in the way he said it that made my chest go tight in a new way. Something like being expected. I wrapped both hands around the mug. Silas. Yes, ma'am. How much did you know? He pulled up a wooden crate, sat down across from me. I knew he left home young. I knew he had a little sister he never got to say goodbye to. I knew he sent no letters because he was afraid your father would find him and finish what he'd started. I knew he stopped drinking in '92. I knew he built this barn from the ground up over 11 years, weekends and evenings. I knew he loved a woman named Marlowe. I knew he had a son. I looked up. A son? Silas nodded. Patient, like a man who had been carrying a heavy stone for a long time and was finally allowed to set it down. His name is Owen, he said. He's 28 years old, he lives in Portland, and he does not know you exist. I don't remember drinking the coffee. I don't remember the walk from the barn to Silas and Ruth's house. I remember the porch light on their kitchen. Yellow, warm, the way porch lights used to be when I was a girl and they meant someone is still awake and waiting for you. Ruth met me at the door. She was small, round, white hair in a braid down her back, flour on her apron. She took one look at my face and did not say hello. She just opened her arms. I walked into them. I had not been held by another woman since my mother died. That was a very long time ago. She did not say they're there. She did not say it will be okay. She just held on, and when I finally stepped back, she nodded at the kitchen. Come sit, she said. I made stew. Ruth, I can't eat. You can sit, she said. That'll do. So I sat. The stew was on the stove. The kettle was on. There were fresh biscuits under a cloth on the counter and a butter dish shaped like a hen and a jar of blackberry jam with a hand-lettered label that said Ruth W. Summer 24. It was the kitchen of a woman who fed people, and she had been feeding my brother, I realized, for decades. She caught me looking. He came to Sunday supper 22 years, Eleanor, she said quietly. Every week, sat right there. She pointed at a chair at the head of the table. Never missed one unless he was too sick to walk over. I looked at the chair. It was empty. Of course it was empty, but it was the emptiest empty I had ever seen. Ruth showed me the wall. I had not noticed it at first because the light was low. Above the sideboard in the dining room, there were photographs, framed, not dozens, 6 or 7, a whole life reduced to a handful of moments. Bennett at 40 laughing with a fish on a line. Bennett in his 50s standing beside a cradle he had just built for someone in town. Bennett at 60 gray-bearded, now arm around Silas at what looked like a summer barbecue. And in every photograph, every single one, there was a chair beside him, a wooden chair, the same wooden chair, sometimes at a picnic table, sometimes on a porch, empty, always empty. He carried it with him, Ruth said, behind me, everywhere he went that a camera might be. He said it was for his sister. He said, Ruth, when Ellie comes, she'll see. She'll know I saved her a seat. I could not breathe because he had known. He had known I would come, not hoped, not wished, known. The way you know the sun will come up, the way you know your own name. Ruth put a hand on the small of my back, just her palm, warm through my sweater. Eat something, honey, she said. Then read the letters. That's the order. Trust me, I've buried enough people to know. I read all night. Not all of them. There were too many. But I read the top of each bundle. 1985, the year he left. Ellie girl, I am in Idaho. I got a job at a sawmill. The man who runs it doesn't ask questions. I sleep in a bunkhouse with 6 other men. I told the foreman my name was Ben. Just Ben. Because I do not want anyone to find me. Not until you are safe from him. I dream about you every night. In the dream, you are always 8 years old and you are always laughing. 1988, 3 years gone. Ellie, I got word today that Mama died. A man I used to know in town wrote to me care of the mill. I did not go to the funeral. I could not. If I show my face in that town, he will find you again. I sat by a river all day, and I said goodbye to her by myself. I hope you were not alone at the graveside. I hope someone stood next to you. I had been alone. I had stood next to my father, and my father had held my elbow like a warden, and I had believed my brother did not care. I put the letter down. I picked up the next bundle. 1991, the year I met Robert. Ellie, girl, I do not know if you are married. I do not know if you are happy. I do not know if you finished school or where you live or what you look like as a grown woman. But I think about you every day. I say your name out loud sometimes when I am working alone, just to make sure I still can. 1996, the year Corinne was born, Ellie. I do not know if you have children. I hope you do. I hope you have a little girl. I think you would be very good with a little girl. I hope she has your laugh. I made a sound, not a word, not a sob, something between, because he had guessed right. He had guessed right. I had a daughter and I had named her Corinne, and she had my laugh. I read for hours. The years stacked up around me on the kitchen table. Ruth put a blanket over my shoulders at some point. I did not notice until it was there. Silas refilled my coffee. Neither of them spoke. Neither tried to hurry me. They just moved around me the way you move around a person holding something breakable. Because I was. The kitchen clock read 4 in the morning when I reached the middle of the pile. 2005, I paused. Because 2005 was the year my father died. I already knew what my father had told me on his deathbed. That Bennett had been worthless. That Bennett had broken his mother's heart. That Bennett had never sent so much as a postcard because Bennett did not care about family. I had held my father's hand while he said it. I had believed him. Because he was dying. Because he was my father. Because who lies on a deathbed? I opened the 2005 letter. Ellie, I saw the notice in a paper today. Someone at the diner had it. Our father is dead. Did not know how to feel. I sat in the truck in the parking lot for 2 hours. And then I drove home, and I did not tell anyone. Not Silas, not Ruth. I want you to know this. I did not celebrate. I did not grieve. I just sat. And I thought about you standing at his grave believing lies about me, that he told you to keep you tied to him. Because that is what men like him do, Ellie. They cannot let go of the people they broke. They have to keep them believing. I hope you were not alone at his graveside either. I hope for one moment you doubted him. I did not weep this time. I could not. Something in me had gone past weeping. It had gone into a quiet, terrible stillness. The stillness of understanding a thing that cannot be ununderstood. I whispered to the wood of the table, I didn't doubt him. I'm sorry, I didn't doubt him. Ruth's hand came to rest on the back of my neck. She did not tell me it was all right. She just kept it there. And that was the mercy. Morning came without me noticing. Gray light in the kitchen window. The smell of bacon. Silas at the stove sleeves rolled each spatula in hand. Ruth setting 3 plates. I had not slept. My eyes felt like sand. Eleanor, Silas said without turning. You want 2 eggs or 3? 2. Coming up. Ruth sat down across from me. She had a manila folder in her hands. She waited until Silas set the plate in front of me before she spoke. Honey, she said, there is one more thing you need to know, and it isn't in the letters. I looked at her. She looked at Silas. He nodded. She opened the folder. Inside was a photograph, a boy, maybe 7 years old, blonde, serious mouth, standing in a doorway I did not recognize, holding a stuffed rabbit by the ear. His name is Owen, Ruth said. He is your brother's son, and there is something we have to tell you about his mother. Her name was Marlowe Prescott. Ruth said it slowly, like a name she had loved. She taught 4th grade at the elementary in town. She had red hair and a laugh that carried across a room. Your brother met her at a hardware store. He was 38. She was 34. They fell in love the way 2 people fall in love when they have both stopped expecting to. Ruth turned the photograph over. On the back in a woman's handwriting, Owen age 7, Halloween 1997. They never married. I looked up. Why? Ruth glanced at Silas. Silas set down the spatula. He came to the table. He sat down. He folded his big rough hands together on the tablecloth. And he told me. Bennett would not put his real name on a marriage certificate. Not with any county. He was afraid Eleanor. Even that many years after he left, he was afraid a piece of paper filed publicly might reach the wrong eyes. Might find your father. Might find you. So he and Marlowe lived as partners. Nobody in this town cared. We knew what they were to each other. And Owen. Owen was born in 1990. Bennett was 38. He was the happiest I ever saw him. He built that boy a rocking horse before he could sit up, a bed frame before he could walk. He built him a whole childhood board by board. Silas's voice caught. He took a breath. Marlowe got sick when Owen was 6, ovarian. It moved fast. She was gone in 11 months. Ruth's hand covered his. Owen was 7 when she died, Silas went on. And Bennett because there was no marriage on paper, because Marlowe's parents were people of some means from Boise who moved fast. Bennett could not get standing to keep him. He was named as father, but by then Owen had already been living with the grandparents for 4 months while Marlowe was in hospice. And Bennett, this is the part he told me only once in this kitchen. At 2 in the morning, Bennett said he was afraid that if he fought them in open court, his real name would go on public record and someone from his old life might read it. He was afraid that fighting for Owen might put Owen in danger. Silas closed his eyes, so he let him go, legally, cleanly. It broke something in him he never got back. He watched him grow up from a distance, Ruth said quietly. Drove down to Portland twice a year. Public events, school plays, graduations. Never once approached him. Never once spoke to him. Just kept a record. From places anybody would have been allowed to stand. A record, Ruth nodded. That's the other thing you need to see. They walked me back to the barn at sunrise. The forest was silver with mist. The trees dripped. A jay was screaming somewhere up the ridge. I had not slept in 24 hours and my body did not care. Silas opened the sliding door. Barn looked different in daylight. I could see the beams now. The joinery. The pegs where nails should have been. My brother had built this the old way, the right way, the way men had built barns for 200 years before machines told them not to bother. Silas led me to the far corner, to the cherry cabinet where the boss of letters had been. He knelt. He pulled the cabinet aside on some kind of runner I had not noticed. Behind it at the base of the wall was a small square door, wooden, latched. He said in his last week, Silas told me still kneeling, Silas, when she comes, take her to the corner. Move the cabinet, show her the door. That's all you have to do. He stood up. He brushed his knees. I'll be on the porch. He left. I knelt down. My hands were cold. I put my palm on the little wooden door, and I closed my eyes and I said out loud to no one, Okay, Bennett, okay. I lifted the latch. The door opened. Inside was a low crawl space, dry, clean swept, a single pull cord dangling. I tugged it. A bare bulb clicked on and lit the space in warm yellow. There were 3 things: a leather album, thick, well-worn, a canvas envelope sealed with wax, a wooden box smaller than the letterbox with a keyed lock on the front. I lifted out the album first. I sat down on the barn floor with it in my lap, right there, in the dust, and I opened it. The first photograph was of a school gymnasium, a first-grade class play, fall of 1996, a little boy in a crown made of construction paper. The photograph had been taken from the back of the auditorium from a public seat. On the back in careful pencil, Owen School Play. I sat in the last row. I turned the page. Owen, age 8, School Spring Concert, Choir Riser. The photograph was taken from the same row of parent seats every parent in the auditorium had access to. Owen, age 10, Little League Game from the public bleachers. Owen, age 12, Middle School Science Fair, in a hallway open to families. Owen at 14, in a marching band uniform playing a trombone on a football field on a Friday night. Owen at 18, high school graduation, in a cap and gown walking across a stage that any member of the community could have watched from the back. Every photograph had been taken from a place a stranger would have been allowed to stand, from a place a parent would have stood. But not one of them had been from close up. Not one of them was of Owen looking at the camera, because my brother had never let his son see him. He had gone to every public thing. He had stopped at every private door. I turned another page. Owen at 19. Then a gap of 5 pages. Blank. Empty photograph sleeves. I turned to the next filled page. Owen at his own wedding, taken from the very back pew of a church with a program open in the photographer's lap. You could see the top of Bennett's own knuckles at the edge of the frame, holding the program. He had photographed his son's wedding by tilting the phone up over the paper, so no one behind him would notice. On the back, Owen married Hannah today. She looks kind. He looks happy. I sat in the last pew. I left before the recessional. Nobody saw. I turned the page. A baby, newborn. Pink, asleep in a stroller in a public park. Photograph taken from a park bench. Josie, my granddaughter, spring 2020. Kept my distance. Left when the mother turned toward me. I put my hand over my mouth because my brother had known. He had known what it would look like to a stranger, and he had written it down. He had made it a rule for himself. Only public events, only from far away, leave when they turn toward you. I had spent 20 years being careful not to be a shadow over his own son's life. I closed the album, I put my forehead down on it, and I stayed there for a long time. When I could move again, I opened the canvas envelope. Inside was money, bundles of it, neat, banded. I counted quickly. $80,000. Under the bundles, a folded note for Owen, not to buy his forgiveness, just to help him build his life. Please give it to him, Ellie, please. Whatever else you do or do not do, please make sure he gets this and tell him. Tell him I was there. Tell him every picture was public. Tell him I never followed him home. I set the envelope down, carefully. Then I picked up the wooden box, the keyed one. I did not have the key. I ran my fingers along the seam. I tried the barn key, wrong shape. I closed my eyes. I tried to think like my brother. I looked up at the wall of tools. Every tool had its outlined place. Every hammer, every chisel, every plane. Except there, on the top row, a small outline of a hook, and hanging from the hook, a single tiny key on a leather thong. I had walked past it 3 times without seeing it. I took the key down. I fitted into the box. It turned. Inside was a journal, leather-bound, full. His handwriting on every page. And on the very first page in ink, still fresh compared to the rest, for my son. In case I never get the chance to say it out loud. I closed the journal. I did not read it, because this journal was not mine to read first. This journal belongs to a young man in Portland who thought his father had not loved him. It was my job. Mine, Eleanor Ashford, 58 years old, widow, sister, aunt. He did not know he had to put it in his hands. I walked back to the porch. Silas was on the top step, coffee in his hand, looking at the tree line. I sat down beside him. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he said, without looking at me, "There's one more thing." I turned. "Silas, I don't know how much more I can hold." "I know, but you need to know why he stopped waiting." "Stopped what?" "Stopped hoping he'd get to meet the boy." He set his coffee down. He looked at his hands. 5 years ago, Bennett got a diagnosis, ALS, slow progressing at first. He had time, but he knew what was coming, knew he was going to lose his hands. And after his hands, everything else. He sat right where you're sitting now, and he told me. I asked him, "Bennett, is this when you go to Portland? Is this when you knock on your boy's door? Because now you got a reason. Now you got a clock." Silas's voice cracked. "And your brother looked at me, Eleanor, and he said, 'No, Silas. That's exactly why I don't go. I am not going to walk into that boy's life so he can watch me disappear from it. He already lost a mother he can barely remember. He is not going to lose a father he just got. Better he keeps thinking I didn't want him. Better the wound stays clean." The porch was very quiet. "I was wrong," Silas said. "I told him he was wrong. Ruth told him he was wrong, but he was set. He wrote in that journal every night for 5 years. He worked in the barn until his hands stopped listening. And then he moved into hospice in the county seat, and he made me promise." He said, "Silas, when my sister comes, you tell her everything. You tell her about Owen, about Marlowe, about the diagnosis, and then you let her decide. Because I could not carry it any further, but she will know what to do." Silas looked at me. His pale blue eyes were wet. "So I'm telling you, and now it is yours." I sat on that porch for a long time. The mist burned off the trees. A hawk crossed the sky. Ruth came out with fresh coffee and did not say a word and went back inside. I thought about my daughter Corinne. I thought about the phone call I had not returned. I thought about the $80,000 in a canvas envelope. I thought about a 5-year-old girl named Josie, who was my brother's granddaughter and would never get to meet him. I thought about a young man in Portland who had spent his life believing his father did not care. I thought about the empty chair in every one of my brother's photographs. I stood up. Silas. Yes, ma'am. I need a phone. He looked up. I need to call Portland. I need to call him. Silas rose slowly. He did not smile. He knew this was not a smiling moment. He just nodded. Once. Deep. The nod of a man who had waited a long time to see somebody do the right thing. Come inside, he said. There's a landline in the kitchen. Ruth had already looked up the number. She had it written on a piece of paper by the phone. In her careful teacher's cursive, Owen Prescott, Architect, Portland. Home line, do not call before 8 a.m. It was 7:52. I sat down with the receiver in my hand. Corinne would be so angry. Corinne was going to say, Mom, you are unraveling. Mom, you are chasing ghosts. And I loved my daughter, but I was not unraveling. For the first time in a very long time, I was gathering. I picked up the receiver. I dialed. The line clicked. Rang once, twice. A man answered, middle-aged voice, warm, slightly sleepy. Hello, I opened my mouth, closed it. I said, hello, my name is Eleanor Ashford. I am your father's sister. The silence on the other end was so long, I thought the line had gone dead. Then very quietly in a voice that broke in the middle of the word, ma'am, would you say that again? I opened my eyes. Outside the kitchen window, the mist had lifted. Sunlight was moving across the ridge. In the barn behind the house, my brother's tools waited on their pegs exactly where he had left them, waiting for a silence to end. I whispered, I am your father's sister. And he loved you, Owen. Another long silence. Then in a voice I would carry with me for the rest of my life, ma'am, please tell me everything. Owen said he would drive up that weekend, alone. I told him it was a 5-hour drive from Portland. I told him he could take his time. He said, ma'am, I have been ready a long time. I just did not know it. And he hung up. I sat at Ruth's kitchen table for a long time after that, not thinking, just being still. The way you are still after a wave has passed over you, and you are checking to make sure you are still standing. Corinne called that afternoon. I let it ring once, then I picked up. Mom? Hi, sweetheart. Mom, I got your text. What do you mean staying a few more days? I mean, I'm staying a few more days. To do what? I took a breath. Corinne, your uncle had a son. His name is Owen. He is 28. He's coming here this weekend. He didn't know I existed. I need to give him his father's letters, in person. Silence. Then quieter than I expected, Mom. Yes. Do you remember the summer I was 10, when Dad was overseas for that contract job, and you and we did that whole month, just us. And one night I asked you why you didn't have any brothers or sisters. And you said I did one, sweetheart, but he went away. And I asked when he was coming back. And you got very quiet. I closed my eyes. I did remember. I had forgotten I remembered. But I did. Yes. I thought about that for years, Mom. I made up a whole story about him. I was mad at him for you. I thought he was a bad man. Her voice broke. He wasn't a bad man, was he? No, sweetheart, I whispered. He wasn't. She was quiet for a moment. Then, are you going to be safe up there? Yes. Can I call you tomorrow, just to hear your voice? Yes. Mom, yes. I love you. I love you too, baby. She hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time, because something had just happened that I did not have a name for. My daughter at 32 had just remembered a story I had told her when she was 10, and she had used it to find me. I looked out the kitchen window. This barn is doing this, I thought. This barn is fixing things I did not know were broken. Owen arrived on Saturday morning. I was on the porch when his car pulled up. A dark blue Subaru Road Dusty. He got out slowly. Tall, lean, sandy hair, a gray shirt tucked into jeans, a leather jacket over one arm. He stood there beside the car, and he did not look at me. He looked at the barn, at the sign that said Ashford, at the tree line his father had cleared by hand, at the world his father had built and never let him see. His jaw tightened. I saw it from the porch. That tightening, The one you make when the anger is fighting the grief and the grief is winning, but not by much. He stayed there a full minute, not moving. I did not go down. Because a man had to arrive. Not just at a place. At the place inside himself where a whole story he had been told was about to be replaced with a whole story he was not ready for. When he finally turned toward the porch, his eyes were red, but he was steady. I stood up. We met in the middle of the drive. I did not know what to do. I am 58 years old and I have hugged strangers before, but I did not know how to hug my nephew for the first time when he was a grown man, and I had missed all of it. So I put out my hand. He looked at it. Then he did something that surprised me. He shook it, formally, once, firmly. Ma'am, he said, his voice was tight. I have been driving 5 hours, he said, and I have been angry for 4 of them. I am not angry at you. I want you to know that. I am angry at a man I never met, and I am not sure I know how to stop being angry at him, and I do not want to walk into his house today pretending I don't feel it. So I am telling you first. I stared at him. Then, without meaning to, I said, your father would have liked that. He blinked. Ma'am, I was honest about the things that mattered, even when it cost him. He would have liked that you told me first. Owen's mouth trembled once. He put both hands over his face, and then only then I stepped forward and put my arms around him. He shook once hard, and then he held on. Silas watched from the porch with his hat in his hands. Ruth was crying into her apron. The trees kept doing what trees do. He would not sit down at first. He wanted to walk the property. He wanted to see the barn. He wanted to touch it. So I let him. I walked behind him. Silas was somewhere on the ridge giving us room. Owen touched the barn wall. It was a body. He walked around the outside slow, fingertips on the boards. He mortared these joints himself, he said after a while. You can see it. This is old country joinery. He stopped. He put his forehead against the boards. I hate that I know that, he whispered. I hate that I know what I'm looking at. I hate that this is a language he knew and I learned somewhere else, and now I get to stand here and read the walls of a house he built and never let me see. Owen, I know. Come inside when you're ready. Not yet. I let him be. He walked all the way around. He looked in the windows. He got down on his knees and looked at the foundation. He read it. When he came back to me, his face was wet. He didn't wipe it. Show me inside, he said. We went in through the sliding door. The sun was slanting through the high windows and gold columns. Owen stopped 4 steps inside. He looked at the workbench, at the wall of tools, at the rocking chair under the drop cloth, at the coffee mug his father had left on the bench 2 years ago, still there. He put his hand over his mouth. Oh, that was all. I walked to the bench. I picked up the leather journal. I walked back to him. He wrote this for you, I said. He looked at it in my hands. He did not reach for it. Ma'am, is he in there? Yes. Everything. His neighbor said he wrote in it every night for 5 years. He wanted you to have it. Owen took the journal. His hands were shaking so hard he had to hold it against his chest. There's more, I said. I brought out the canvas envelope. I set it on the workbench. I unfolded the note for Owen, not to buy his forgiveness, just to help him build his life. Owen read it, his face closed. He handed the note back to me. Later, I can't, later. Okay. And there was a photo album, a shows for him. I sat him down at the workbench and I stepped back. I stepped all the way back. I went and sat on the stool by the door because a man needed to meet his father, and I did not need to be closer than that. He turned pages for a long time. Sometimes he laughed, little cracked laughs. Oh God, the marching band. Oh God, the haircut. He was there, he was there. Sometimes his face went dark. Sometimes he stopped and pressed his hand flat to a page and did not move for a full minute. When he reached the wedding photograph, he stopped. He looked at it for a long time. Then, without turning around, Eleanor. Yes, honey. He was there. At my wedding. Yes. Hannah would have. His voice broke. Hannah would have set him a place. I put my hand over my own mouth because that was the sentence. That was the sentence. He closed the album. He stood up. He walked to the workbench. He picked up the coffee mug his father had left. He held it in both hands. He did not drink from it. He just held it. Then he set it back down, exactly where it had been, in the exact ring of dust. And he turned to me and said, I don't forgive him yet. I nodded. I want you to know that. I don't forgive him yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But I am not going to stand in his barn and pretend that I do because that would be a lie and he did not raise me to lie. He stopped. He half laughed. He did not raise me at all, but you know what I mean. I know. Ma'am. Eleanor, please. Eleanor, tell me about him. Please, not the sad parts. I've got the sad parts. Tell me the ordinary things. What he ate for breakfast, what he laughed at. So I called Silas in, and Silas sat down on a wooden crate in the middle of the barn, and Ruth brought a folding chair and a plate of cookies, and Owen sat on the floor with his back against the workbench, and I sat on the stool by the door, and Silas talked. He talked about the way Bennett hummed old country songs while he sanded, about the way Bennett could not stand cinnamon in anything ever, about the winter storm of 2011 when Bennett walked 2 miles in the snow because Ruth had thrown her back out and someone had to bring them groceries. He talked about the summer Bennett taught a teenager from town how to turn a bowl on the lathe because the kid was going down a bad road, and Bennett had said, Silas, that boy needs a thing his hands can make. He talked about the way Bennett would set out an empty chair at every summer barbecue, and if anyone asked, would just say, that's for my sister. In case she comes, Owen sat on the floor and listened to a father he had never met be described by a man who had loved him. When Silas was done, Owen was quiet for a long time. Then he said, okay, just that. Okay, it was not forgiveness, but it was the beginning of the ground where forgiveness might one day grow. That night, we ate dinner at Ruth's table. Ruth had set the head of the table with Bennett's chair. Nobody sat in it. Nobody moved it either. Owen looked at the empty chair once. He nodded small. We ate stew and biscuits and blackberry jam. Owen told stories about Josie. She was 5 and she was obsessed with dinosaurs, and she had recently informed her grandmother that geese were technically dinosaurs and had been very firm about it. Ruth laughed until she wheezed. Silas said, that's a Bennett line if I ever heard one. He'd have loved that kid. Owen's face did the complicated thing again. Then he said quietly, I want to bring her here, her and Hannah, next month. I want them to see it. Any time, Ruth said. This is your barn now. Owen looked up. No, ma'am, it's Eleanor's. I set my spoon down. It's ours, I said. The three of them looked at me. I said it again because I wanted to hear it again. It's ours. Owen drove home Sunday afternoon. He hugged me at his car. I'll call you, he said. Give me a couple weeks. I've got some things to sit with. Take all the time you need. But I will call. I know you will. He got in the car. He rolled it down the window. Eleanor. Yes. Thank you for coming. I put my hand on the door frame. Thank you for answering the phone. He smiled. It was Bennett's smile. Then he drove away, and I stood in the drive and watched his tail lights until they disappeared into the pines. I stayed in Blackwood 2 more weeks. Silas and I cleaned the barn together. We did not talk much. Ruth fed us 3 times a day. I slept in the guest room off her kitchen. I called Corinne every night. We talked about small things, her kids, her husband's job, a book she was reading. Then on the 10th night, she said, Mom, yes, I want to bring the kids up there in August. I sat down on the edge of the guest bed. Yes. Would you like that? Yes, sweetheart. Bonna's been asking about the barn. Ben, she had named him Ben, and I had not connected the dots in a decade. Because I had been so careful not to say my brother's name that I had let my daughter name my grandson after him, and I had not let myself hear it. He has. Yeah, he said, Mom, is the barn Great Uncle Bennett built the one we're going to see? And I said yes, and he asked if it had a hayloft. I told him I'd ask you. I laughed. It came out wet. It has a hayloft, honey. Then he'll be over the moon. Corinne, yeah, I would like that very much. Owen called on the 14th day. He said he had read the journal. He did not tell me what was in it. He said, I don't know if I'm ready to say I forgive him, but I understand now. Understanding is not forgiveness, but it is not nothing either. I want you to know that. Okay. I want to bring Hannah and Josie up in 3 weeks. Would that be all right? Yes. And Eleanor? Yes. I want to do something with the money, with his money. I don't want to keep it in my account. It doesn't feel right there. What do you want to do? He was quiet, then he said, I'll bring drawings. Owen brought drawings. He unfolded them on Ruth's kitchen table. Architectural sketches done in careful pencil. The barn, but the barn plus. 2 small cabins tucked against the tree line. A covered dining pavilion off the porch. A vegetable garden expanded. a footpath through the pines to a fire circle by the creek. "What is this?" I said. Owen glanced at Silas. He looked at his hands. "Eleanor, I don't want the money." "Owen, I don't, please. My father spent his life saving it because he could not give me a father. I don't want to cash a check and walk around Portland pretending that fixed anything." He took a breath. "But I don't want it to be nothing either." He nodded at the drawings. "I want us to build something. With it. Here. Together. Something that means what he meant." I looked at the drawings. "What is it, honey?" "It's a place. For families. Families that lost each other. Families that don't know how to find each other." Silas was watching me. Ruth was standing in the doorway with a dish towel in her hands. Hannah was on the porch reading Josie a book. Owen went on quieter now. Not a retreat center, not a program, nothing formal, just a place, a weekend, a table, a porch, a fire, a woman who bakes bread, a man who teaches you to plane a board. Silas and Ruth said they'd do it. If we build it, they will, and someday we take it over. Owen. "We don't advertise. We don't charge. Word travels. Somebody hears from somebody. A brother and a sister who haven't spoken in 20 years. A mother and a son who don't know how to sit in the same room. They come. They stay 3 days. They eat. They walk in the woods. They fix a piece of furniture to Thor. Nobody makes them talk. Nobody makes them do anything. They just get a place where nobody's trying to fix them." I looked down at the paper. I looked back up at him. He was Bennett's boy. He was Bennett's boy through and through. "Okay," I said. Yeah, honey." He put his hand over his eyes. Silas cleared his throat. "Well, I guess we better order lumber." Ruth said, "I'm baking bread every weekend from May to September is what I'm hearing." "Yes, Ruth." "All right, then." We called it the Ashford Barn, not because it was a business. It was not a business. But we needed a name so somebody could say it, so somebody could hear it one town over, one state over, and say, "Have you heard of the Ashford Barn?" The first family came the following June. Two sisters from Idaho. They had not spoken in 15 years. They had grown up in a house that had been in different words, a lot like the house I grew up in. They arrived in separate cars. They stood in the driveway looking anywhere but at each other. Ruth made them lunch. Silas took them out to the wood shop and put a piece of walnut in front of each of them and said, "There's a bowl in there. You two are going to find it. You do not have to speak, but you do have to hand each other the tools when it's your turn." Owen and I watched them from the porch. By day 2, they were passing the sandpaper without looking. By day 3, they were laughing at something the older one had said about their mother's hats. On this morning they left, they hugged in the driveway for a long time. The older one pressed a folded $20 bill into my palm. "For coffee," she said. "Ma'am, for your next family, whoever they are." I put the 20 in a mason jar on Ruth's kitchen counter. By the end of that summer, the jar had $438 in it. Ruth used it to buy a bigger stew pot. I kept my house in Sacramento. Corinne had been right in her way. I did need Sacramento. I needed the tomato plants. I needed Robert's flannel shirt in the closet. I needed the pew at the church where I had sat next to him. But every May I came up to Blackwood. And every September I closed the barn for the winter and drove south with a truck full of jars from Ruth's garden and a heart full of new stories. Bon and Mia came every August. Josie came almost every month because Portland was only a few hours. Corinne started calling me on Tuesdays instead of Sundays. Hannah and I got close in a way I did not expect. She was quiet the way I had been quiet, and she saw things in me I had stopped seeing in myself. One afternoon in the second summer, she stood beside me on the porch and said without looking at me, "You know my mother died when I was 11. You know I did not have an older woman in my life for a long time." I said, "I know, honey." She said, "I do now," and she leaned in. Owen and I read Bennett's letters together over years, one a week, sometimes one a month. We did not want to run out. The one from the year I got married. Bennett had guessed I was married. He had written, "I hope he is kind. I hope he laughs at your jokes even when they are not funny. I hope he brings you coffee in bed." Robert had done all three. The one from the year my mother died. Just Ellie. "I sat by a river today. I hope somebody sat with you." The one from the year Robert died. I did not know how Bennett had known, but he had known. Ellie girl. Something in me told me today. I don't know what. I sat in the shop and I could not work. I wanted you to know, wherever you are, whatever happened, I am sitting with you today. I put that letter in a frame. I hung it in my bedroom in Sacramento, where I could see it before I went to sleep at night. One evening in the third summer, Owen came up to the porch where I was reading. He sat down beside me on the swing. Eleanor, hi, honey. I finished the journal. I set my book down. He wrote about you. He was quiet. He wrote that if he could give me one thing that was not money and not lumber and not a name, he'd give me you. He said, son, if you ever meet your Aunt Ellie, hold on to her. She is the soft piece of what we were. She is what I was trying to protect when I left. I could not speak. Owen looked out at the barn. I forgive him now. He said it simply, the way you say a thing you have carried a long time. I forgive him. It took me 3 years, but I forgive him. He put his head on my shoulder. He was a grown man, and he put his head on my shoulder. And I finally understood what my brother had been trying to save. Not just me from a violent house. This, the soft peace. The peace that could still be a lap. The peace that could still be an aunt. He had known somewhere, somehow, in whatever quiet place a man knows things, that if he did not sacrifice himself, our father would break the soft peace too. So he left. So I could still be here on a porch in Oregon in the third summer with his son's head on my shoulder. I put my hand in Owen's hair, the way you do with a child, even when the child is a man, even when the child is not yours, even when it is a whole lifetime late and still somehow exactly on time. I am 61 years old now, 3 years since I picked up the kitchen phone with dirt on my hands, 3 years since I drove north through the pines alone, 3 years since I slid a rusted key into a padlock and opened a door I did not know I had been carrying my whole life. I still miss Robert. I miss him every day. I miss Bennett too. I miss a brother I did not get to have as an adult. But I have stopped being angry. Because I understand now what it means to love somebody from a distance so far you cannot even wave. I understand now that silence is not always the absence of love. Sometimes silence is love. Sometimes silence is a man staying away because coming closer would hurt you. Sometimes silence is a woman not saying her brother's name for a lifetime because saying it would have meant admitting she was still hoping. I hoped. I know that now. I hoped every single one of those years. I just did not have a word for what I was doing. If you are watching this, and I know some of you are, I want to say one thing. You may not know the whole story. You may only know the part that hurt. But there is almost always another part. There is almost always a reason somebody went quiet. That was not what you thought. There is almost always a chair being set for you at a table you do not know exists. I am not asking you to pick up the phone tomorrow. I am asking you not to close the door all the way. Leave it cracked. Leave a key under the mat because you never know when a lawyer is going to call on a Tuesday afternoon while you are watering the tomato plants. You never know when a stranger at a gas station is going to look at your face and say, "Are you Bennett's sister?" You never know when a padlock is going to click open under the touch of a key you have been carrying without knowing it. The best chapters of my life were not behind me. They were waiting in a barn on 2 acres in Oregon. They were waiting for me to be brave enough to drive. You have a barn too. Everybody does. It may not be a barn. It may be a phone number. It may be a name you have not said in a long time. It may be a door in your own chest you nailed shut when you were young because you did not have the words yet to open it. You have the words now. You are old enough now. You are brave enough now. Whatever it is, whoever it is, go. Because love is not always the thing that stayed. Sometimes love is the thing that left. And sometimes if you are brave enough to turn a rusted key, love is the thing that waited for a very long time for you.